Everybody, welcome back to Thinking Outside the Bank for another episode where we're not only talking just about creative real estate and creative finance, but also talking to people about how they deal with things differently in life when they're faced with obstacles. And that leads me to my next guest and good friend, Nathan Smith. Nate, welcome to the show. Welcome to Thinking Outside the Bank, man.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, yeah. We are, and I was just telling Nathan this before. He's actually going to be my first guest that's non-directly real estate related, and I'm actually really excited about that because this podcast was not just developed to be all about creative finance, creative real estate. Yeah, we may share some tips and some nuggets, and I may relate to some things, but Nate has an awesome background, and I've gotten to know him over the past couple of years, thankfully, through our kids, through our church, through our men's breakfast. We'll get into that as well. So I'm just really excited to talk to Nathan some more. He's got a really unique background, and yeah, so I just want to kind of kick it to you first, Nate, about tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your background? Where'd you grow up? And yeah, what led you to where you are now? And we'll kind of dig in.
Yeah, so I am from the great state of Ohio. And when you are born in Ohio, like in the borders of Ohio, you are just baptized into Buckeye Nation. And so I can't stand Buckeye fans, but I am one. So there's that paradox. But yeah, I basically grew up in Southern Ohio, more of what you would describe as a rural country area, city of Hillsborough, and grew up on a farm. Not a traditional farm where we had, let's say, like cows and pigs and things like that. It was a farm, and other farmers leased out the land to farm crops on it. But it was 30 acres, and so I had really an awesome childhood in the sense that I could just get home from school and go running in the woods. And outside of that 30 acres, there were hundreds of acres that we could just roam. And so I was really just blessed to grow up in a place where I was surrounded by nature. My grandmother grew up in the house with me. I had my mom, two older sisters. I have a younger brother as well. But it was just, as I've described to people, you just can't receive any more love as a boy than to be in a house with your grandmother and your mom, and then two sisters that are always just taking care of you. And so I had like a really, looking back in a certain sense, I had a very privileged childhood, not in when it comes to wealth or anything like that, but just experiences and just being able to be free and knowing what freedom tastes like. And so that's really where I came from, and I would say that that has carried over into every phase of my life. It's kind of like that, just the idea that once you've tasted freedom, you never ever want to go back. And so that's been the great thing and the challenge, both personally and professionally. I've always known from a young age, like at my core, what it is to be free. And so when other people have come in and they've said, "Hey, this is who you are, or isn't this what you want?" I'm like, "No, not particularly." And so I think that I'm very privileged in that sense from a very young age to just be able to say, "I know what I want and I know what I don't want." And I think that that also, just speaking of the topic of creativity, which we can delve into, I think that really just tied into how I approach things creatively as well.
Oh, for sure. And man, I can really relate to what you talked about. Not the growing up on the farm with 30 acres. However, that sounds amazing because I grew up in a little town in Plant City, about an hour and a half west of where we live now in Florida.
Hmm.
But I had a lot of friends that were the same, like lived out more in I would call the country, and there was lots of land. We'd ride four-wheelers. We'd, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
and so I'm gonna throw out my first kind of really pivot question here for you. Um, and I had this posed to me via another friend who got it asked to by one of our like real estate mentors. When we talk about wealth, right? You look at wealth, I think a lot of the same I do. I grew up very wealthy, but not in the terms of money.
Hmm.
And really, it reminded me of that because the world so much sometimes tells us, you're supposed to want more, you got to want the bigger house and this and that. And that requires more money and grinding harder. And don't get me wrong, like, yeah, do I want some of that? Sure. But the
Hmm.
question was posed to me was, I'm going to pose it to you the exact same way. How much money, if I gave you $1 trillion, would that be enough to walk away from your wife and your kids?
No,
About,
no,
about 2
no.
trillion, 3 trillion.
Um, yeah, go ahead. There, there's no amount of money priceless, you know? It's
Exactly. So that makes
and a lot
you
of that comes
wealthy in a
down
lot
to,
of ways,
yeah.
right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
You're wealthy as a family man, as a father in your faith. There's so many more things than just money out there. And I've met so many
Hmm.
people with money who are not happy, as nearly as happy as I've seen you with your kids and your wife and your family. And same thing, we've got a really good core group that I feel like all can relate to that.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
all do well, but none of us are like ultra wealthy. But when it comes to family and faith and community, I think we've got it pretty much some of the best that I've ever seen, and I count myself as very fortunate for that. So I think you kind of got it by judging by the smirk on your face of where I was going with that question. Um, but really, when you talk about creativity and creating the life that you want, that freedom that you had when you were young, now to now when you're a family man, how do you put that into your everyday kind of tasks, and how you guys as a family have kind of shifted what's of most importance to you and really just created what's most important to you?
Yeah. So I mean, I was just talking to my brother about this the other day. We just grew up in a household in which we were kind of playing off of each other. And we were always like, from my earliest memories, whether it was drawing or especially both of us got into writing and then we got into filmmaking when we were older, like more into high school age, there was just creativity was just a huge part of who we were growing up. So it wasn't just that we grew up on a farm. There's a lot of kids out there that grew up on farms. It was it was that we, for whatever reason, I think it was the movies and the media we were consuming, we were very interested and still are in creating original things. So much so that, and this is what I was telling him the other day, I said it's kind of like we were introduced to the drug of creativity as kids, and we are just hooked. And so no matter what facet of life we move through, no matter how professionally we dress, or no matter what job we have, there's still that way that creativity and just the dopamine release that you get from it has shaped our brains in both positive and negative ways. Like I can use creativity to do some really great things where I have to just really manage my creativity because it can really take over and creativity can often be very selfish. I think there was an episode of The Good Place where Kristen Bell said, "All artists go to hell." And her point in saying that was just that to be like a starving, struggling artist, like where your God is your creativity, there's a certain point where you're chasing that so far. Yeah, but creativity, in many ways, creativity can act like a drug in the sense that you can be addicted to it. And instead of choosing into your household chores or spending time with your kids or spending time with your wife, those creative pursuits come calling. And if you choose those things over your family, that can be really destructive. And so you really have to manage your creativity and those creative impulses. As a kid and as a teenager, you can just pursue those to no end. There's no not really many responsibilities, and so you can just create for creativity's sake. But when you get older, you kind of have to manage it so that those creative impulses don't drive everything that you do. Um, there were seasons of my life when I was in creative communities, and those were really great for the art that I was creating, but it wasn't great in the sense that I felt like we were all chasing something a little bit different. And I was one of the few people in those communities that had a family, and so it was very stressful for me because I would see my friends pursuing things. Meanwhile, I was sitting there saying, "Man, I just don't know how to balance what they're pursuing with a family." And unless you bake that into your career, I don't necessarily know if it's possible. So it really comes down to managing that creativity.
That's good. And I guess the biggest thing I will say is, did you find any like specific little hack or brain hack or habit that you had to get into to really manage that? Because I mean, you and I have had this conversation a lot before. I'd say we're both a creative. I mean, from the camera and video perspective. Um, what have you picked up over the years to not allow that to kind of be self-destructive of how you've managed those impulses and those drives to go be in that creative community or do those extra things and realize I still have a family. I'm responsible for that first and foremost. What's your little reminder there?
I'm still trying to figure it out because I have done the self-destructive route before. Absolutely. I mean, there were times where my hack was, okay, I'm teaching full time during the day, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get home from work, tuck the kids in, and then there's certain nights of the week where I'm just going to like basically lock myself in my office and just work deep into the early morning hours, editing, crafting things, working on this stuff. And that was just incredibly taxing. And I think what it spoke to my family at that time was dad obviously has other things that he's prioritizing over us. Or to my wife, my husband is definitely prioritizing other things over me, which didn't feel good to them. And so it's really tough because there's just this desire to want to prove yourself. There's this desire as a creative to not feel powerless. Like, am I contributing something? Does my life have meaning? Like, I have all these different ideas swirling around in my head, and I talk to people about it. And if I don't fulfill those things, and if these people are expecting this from me and it just doesn't happen, and if it doesn't happen on a fast enough timeline, then what are they going to think of me? And so, it that type of creativity, there's so many layers to it and so much noise that it gets really challenging because you find yourself creating not for you, but creating for other people. Even if it's your project, even if it's your endeavor, you're creating kind of for those voices in your head and really just kind of taking a step back and just trying to prioritize and say, okay, what are the things that are important to me? And I was telling my friend Garrett this a while back, but I just realized at a certain point in my life that I could either be bossed around by my creativity, like a worker, like a slave. Like creativity says, you're not meeting your deadlines. You said you were going to do this and you haven't done it. Or I can realize my God-given role, which is that I am the boss over my creativity. And so those voices in my head can say, you need to do this, or you're falling behind. And I could just look at it and say, no, we're not going to do that right now. And so just taking power over that creativity has been really pivotal in this season of life. If you had talked to me 5 years ago, it would have just been like, you just got to grind, man. You just got to grind, sacrifice whatever it takes, like to get the edit done, to get the. But now it's just very much a, um, let's put first things first.
That's good. And man, I guess the first question is, have you been messing around in my head too? Because I have some of those same thoughts. I feel like I can very much relate to that, especially from the wedding videography side. I used to sit out here, the editing, tuck the kids into bed, look at Lindsay and say, "Hey, I'm gonna go edit for a little while." And before you know it, it's 1:30 in the morning, and it's like,
Yeah,
"Oh crap!" And that would go on because we had to get an edit out, and well, now I have a backlog of 2, 3 weddings, and it's like, well, we've already committed to these people. And so then ultimately it was outsourcing some of those and it was taking away some of that control because I not only have those same ideas, but I'm that same thing of have to have control of it. No, it's my edit. I've got to do it. I can't outsource to anybody else. Well,
yeah,
A, then it'll
yeah.
cost me more money to do that. Once I finally like outsourced that, it was back to me in like a week or 2 weeks, honestly, quicker than what I would have done it, cheaper too. And I had my
Yeah,
sanity
yeah,
back and I could spend
yeah.
time with my kids and my wife. And that wasn't a thought in the back of my head, even when I was spending time with my kids and my wife. That's what I'm thinking about in the back of my head is I've got to get this done. I've got a timeline. I've got a deadline. I've got to fulfill all these things, but I want my time back to be with them. So taking that extra little bit of a pay cut, we still made obviously money on it, but factoring that into
Yeah.
one of our costs, it was just another thing. And I found somebody that was very affordable and did good work. And then I'd go back and I'd have final, editors rights to change anything I didn't want to, but it wasn't taking me, 5 nights of 4 to 5 hours of editing at a time to get a wedding
Oh
video.
yeah, sifting through all that footage. Yeah, totally.
It's rough, man. And like I said, as you know. But yeah, I love that. And I want to kind of see how I know a lot of your background obviously is being a teacher. I think when we first met, you were just getting out of teaching full time at Cornerstone.
That's right.
And yeah, take me back to how and why teaching. What was your drive from your transition of childhood into adulthood and becoming a teacher? Where'd you land on that?
Yeah, yeah. So I would say I got saved, which means that I gave my life to Christ when I was 13. So pretty early, and it was very much a kind of a radical conversion in the sense that I just went from kind of a churchgoer to just very into Jesus, like like ministering to my friends overnight like that. It was
Right.
just, I was all in on
Right.
Jesus. And so, especially in the evangelical church, and this can be a good thing and it can also be a very toxic thing. There's this addiction to purpose, and it can be very toxic when you're trying to apply that to teenagers. God has a purpose for your life. What's your purpose? What's your purpose? What's your purpose? And it's not just the traditional question that most teenagers get, like, hey, what job do you want to work? It's what job are you going to work and how is it going to influence the kingdom? And it just keeps going.
Yeah.
And so I was feeling a lot of that pressure as a teenager, and I just wasn't getting any clear answers from God. And so there was one summer I went to church camp, and it was this cool church camp where it was actually a service camp. So it wasn't like, I mean, you would go, and it was in downtown Columbus, Ohio, working in urban neighborhoods, and we just spent 5 days there just doing ministry to kids. And then the last night of church camp, there was a speaker on stage, and she said, I just feel like some of you in this room, like you've been wanting to pursue ministry, but God doesn't just call people to ministry. God asks people to minister wherever they are. And she just started going down a list. I think God in this room, He's calling some people to be lawyers. He's calling some people to be doctors. He's calling some people to be, and she was just going down a list of careers. And when she said teachers, I just felt like the Holy Spirit just wash over me. And it was almost like God was just taking his fingerprint and just like, that's you. That's you. And from that moment on, I mean, you can even ask Jillian, which we were dating at the time, and I was what, 17, 18. She was 16, 17, I don't know. But I just came back and I said, I'm going to be a teacher. Like there was just no question about it. And so I went through school. I went through school really fast because I did some college courses in high school. So I was teaching high school seniors at age 21. And I actually had one high school senior who was 20 years old in my
Whoa.
class. Yeah.
How
So
challenging was that? Oh my gosh.
I mean, it's when you know that teaching is your thing. I mean, the hardest part was just kind of students wanting you to be their buddy,
Yeah.
and then also other teachers just kind of yelling at you in the hallways when you got there in the morning. Hey, what are you doing in the hall? And then you turn around, you're wearing the tie. But honestly, when you're a young teacher as a male, if you wear a tie and you dress professionally, kids just instantly they get it. You look young, but you're wearing the teacher costume, and so they just kind of fall in line in that sense. And so it was really just a calling from God. But and I'll wrap this up rather quickly, but there was in my second year of teaching, I just kind of went through this season where the year just wasn't going that great. It was a job that I didn't necessarily want. I didn't choose the job. I was assigned to a different building in a different classroom. My classroom had no windows. It was in the middle of the building, and so it was just like it
Rough.
felt like a metaphor for my life. There was just no light coming into my life. And so it was really frustrating. And it was one of those moments where I was just like, man, like I thought God called me to this career, and now I'm miserable, I'm angry, I'm bitter. And that was also coincidentally my first year of marriage. So
No
it was
metaphor
just,
there. No metaphor there.
yeah, no metaphor there. And so it was so brutal that season for both my wife and I. And so we just kind of made the decision right after that. This is in Ohio. We made the decision, we're like, for our relationship, we got to get out of here. Like we got to hit the reset button. And that's when we moved to Florida. That's when we started. This is 2011. That's when we started the process of moving here, starting a life here, and everything else that we built here has been a result of that choice. Like we just cannot stay where we are. And long story short, I met an educator here in Orlando. He was the principal at Cornerstone. Cornerstone was my first public school job in Orlando. That's in 2012 or 2011, 2012 school year. But the principal at that time at Cornerstone, his name is Dr. Ron Large, and he just completely reignited my passion for education, reminded me why God put me in this field. And the biggest thing I think was he showed me education can feel like a trap. Like you're in a public school system, you just do what the principal says, just go through the motions, be a robot. But he was an entrepreneur, and what he really showed me was that no, you can make your mark in education. You can change this field. It's not just a field where you're trapped in it. Like God can use you to do really big things in this field. And that drove everything else I did after that. And it just reignited that fire. And it's never been a question since. Even outside the classroom, there is a key part of me that is a teacher, and it's who God has called me to be.
And I've seen that in many ways, obviously in you. When we first met, I think again, I think you had just kind of stepped aside from Cornerstone, but I remember walking to school those days, you saying hi to the kids. The kids obviously had a great relationship with you. It wasn't just like one or two, it was like whole
The kids are the best
classes.
part of teaching. Kids
I
are
was
the best part of teaching. They imagine going to a job and every day you're just surrounded by people who are open and hungry to learn, who are bright, who are optimistic, who are putting on their best selves, even if they're not. Eh, Every day I just get to go to work with 120 awesome people. I mean, how cool is that?
I love that. And honestly, I've gotten involved in youth ministry at my church now here. And I had the same thing. I've always had this passion of working with youth. I've always been around younger kids. I have a big family. And I always thought from early on, I grew up Roman Catholic, was the only way you can minister to people is to be a minister or a pastor.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what was driven into my head, not necessarily by force, but I think that's the overarching thought that I always thought was the fact was unless I'm going to go to monastery, not even monastery, unless I was going to go to ministry, and become a pastor, that just, you just went to church. And for the longest time, I went to middle school, high school, all Catholic high schools. And it was what I knew. I didn't know anything
Hmm.
else. So then when I had the decision in college to go to church or not, I chose not to because I was like, I
Hmm.
just feel like I'm going through the motions. I'm just kind of there. I've
Yeah.
heard all of these stories and these, the gospel and this and that. But even up to that point, I don't know that I'd ever really opened my Bible and read just for me. I'd read
Mm.
because it was part of theology class or whatever. And I knew
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
stories, but I didn't know the stories. So when Lindsay and I met, we decided, we're not going to get married in the Catholic Church. She was not Catholic, I was. And we said, we're going to go a different way and we're going to kind of forge our own path. And we said, if we get married, we're going to still, know God, love Jesus, and so will our kids. And so that's when we found the Christian non-denominational church, and my eyes just were forever changed. We tried a number of them, and I remember sitting on the first time and I was like, man, this is like a concert. Like this is actually fun to be at first
Yeah,
versus like
yeah.
the old hymns and kind of
Hmm.
putting me to sleep, trying to, daze out of it. And all of a
Yeah.
sudden, they're taking these different approaches on biblical history and trying to apply them to modern times of like, how can we still see Jesus even though, we're not in Nazareth and Jerusalem and all these different places like back in the New and Old Testament, how can we take those and how can we learn from them? How can we apply them to everyday life? And I was like, man, I'm so drawn to this. Like it's pouring into me and I can pour into my kids and there's the youth ministry there. It was all of a sudden I like the fire was reignited in me to be like, oh my gosh, like I want to be there again. So that change, that I guess you can call it creativity, a different new perspective on church for me,
Hmm.
really just reignited that path. And I love, again, one of the main things I love about you is you are so strong and you are so bold in your faith that not that you're forcing it on anybody, but you're not afraid to let everybody know, hey, this is who I am. This is what I believe. I won't be compromised, and I'm open to sharing the word of God with you. And I love that. I think it was my first invite to men's breakfast here a few years back, by you and Stephen and Mike. And again, man, I really look forward to those Tuesday mornings now, getting to hear a word middle of the week to kind of motivate you and motivate us as men. It's a different perspective because it is only men in the room versus our wives or our kids or things like
Hmm.
that. So it's I feel like more catered directly to us. Um, you had been
Oh yeah.
involved in
Oh
that
yeah.
for a few years, but
No, I started coming about the same time you guys did. So I
okay.
started coming um that my first time was with Mike and Steven for the Jonathan Isaacs presentation. I mean, back in 2016, I went to the men's breakfast at Discovery for like 2 or 3 months. And to give you some perspective, there were I think 50 guys in the room.
Wow.
And now we're at like what 450 or
Yeah,
400 or something like that. It's crazy.
that's
But
crazy.
so that was just like a brief stint where my schedule allowed. And then with teaching, if I was teaching right now, there's no way I can make that breakfast. There's
Yeah.
just no way because at 7:20 you have 30 dependents waiting on you to open your classroom and get started in first period.
Yep. Yep. So okay, so you started just before I did. And I was the same way. I
Mhm.
wanted to go, I wanted to be there, but at the time being a full-time PT, I started treating sometimes patients at 6:37 in the morning. So I
Yeah, yeah.
was up at 5:15, out of the house by 6, at work by 6:30, opening the clinic. It just wasn't an option. So then when it was a few times when I got into leadership, I was like, wow, I actually like I'm going to change my schedule around so I don't have to be at work till 9 and I could be there. And it was
You,
amazing. Um,
you're glitching
oh,
just a little
I am
bit.
now too. Great. Um, what I would say, and my question to you is, when did you feel called to ultimately lead a table, to be a table head? Or was that opportunity something that was brought to you and said, hey, Nathan, we want you to do this? Or is that something you kind of raised your hand for and kind of walk me through that?
Yeah, so I didn't seek it out. I didn't seek to be a table lead at the men's breakfast. It kind of has a pipeline. So there are certain things that they want you to do within the men's ministry to help form you so that they to test your character, but then also just to make sure that you are growing spiritually. And hey, and so one of the things was you needed to be obviously active at men's breakfast. You needed to have good attendance. You needed to go through discipleship courses that they offer, which is it's a year to 3 year long course, depending on who's leading it, called The Way and the Work of the Disciple, that was written by our pastor. And then there's just a series of things where they want to see that if they want to see if you're ready to lead a group of men. And so I wasn't seeking it out. I actually love Table 11, the table that we were at previously. I love sitting under Mike and Dave's kind of leadership. But it was just brought to me this summer and they said, hey, do you want to do this? And I'm just in a season where I'm really just waiting for the Lord. Like there were seasons of my life and those seasons of striving that I mentioned where it was like you got to create your own opportunities. You just have to. Like you have to go out there and you have to compete and you have to all these different things. And I understand that and I resonate with that a lot. But in this particular season, it's the opposite. In this particular season, everything I'm doing is built around just building and strengthening character, being humble, being obedient to God. Yeah, so I'm just in a season where I'm just waiting on the Lord to see what happens. And so, for example, the men's breakfast thing, they just brought that to me and said, "Hey, would you be willing to do this?" And also, it is definitely a privilege to lead a group of men at men's breakfast, but it's not necessarily. I'm tired of chasing power, if that makes sense. And so it's very easy to walk into an organization and say, "Oh, here's men's breakfast. Who's in charge? Who do I need to become friends with? Who do I need to?" And it's very easy to be like, "Okay, I need to just work my way up."
Yep.
And I did that for so many years, and it's so exhausting personally, relationally,
Oh yeah.
that I'm just in a season where I'm just like I'm really gonna wait for the Lord. And so and that's biblical, right? Like it says, God exalts the humble. So if you like Jesus talked about, and in the book of James, they talk about it. If you go to a dinner and you take the best seat at a dinner just right off the bat, and you claim it, you go, "That's my seat. I'm sitting right next to the person who's leading the dinner." Jesus said, what is that person going to do? They're going to be like, "Oh, hey, my that seat's reserved for my buddy. You need to go sit at the end of the table." But Jesus says, "But if you sit at the end of the table and you wait and you learn what the end of the table teaches you, then God humbles the exalted." And Jesus says, "Hey," or the whoever's hosting the dinner, "Hey, come up here. Come sit with me." And so I've just been in a season where I've just been waiting on the Lord, really focusing on my character and who he wants me to be. And as a result, like there's obviously the men's breakfast thing. And then back in February, I just bumped into a guy at men's boot camp and he said, "Hey, I want to get you to Malawi." And so the opportunity to go to Malawi and be a videographer there and kind of capture what that organization does, that I didn't pursue that. It was just one of those things that God just brought it forward and said, "Hey, would you consider this?" And it's really cool. Like it's opening my eyes to just a different adventure that God wants me to go on. And none of it has to feel forced. I mean, my job is just to make sure that I'm working on my skill sets and that I'm just becoming the person he wants me to become so that when he positions me to go and do these things, I'm ready on multiple levels.
That's so, so good, man. And I can find so many parallels on so many levels. One, you
Mm,
talked about, the chasing power. And I don't think I ever thought about it in my head like that, but my W-2, that's exactly what I thought for the longest time. Was just the next step up, the next leadership position, the next pay raise, the next bump. I'll be right next to the CEO or whoever. and all of a
Yeah.
sudden I'll
Yeah.
think I'll have all this influence. And honestly, like you said, it's exhausting, it's tiring, it's frustrating too because you feel like you work so hard for it. And then sometimes I used to feel like I'm working so hard, I'm working harder than other people, but I'm not being rewarded for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus now it's like work hard on myself,
Hmm.
work on my character, work on my faith, work on my family. And just like you said, God rewards that. He really, really does
Hmm.
because you're working more to better yourself to further spread his word versus
Hmm.
spreading my word and spreading my influence. And, I really, it's
Yeah.
just been
And when you allow
transformational.
him to shape your heart, you also discover that he shapes your motives. Like the things that you long for, the things that you thought you wanted. And it's not like in the sense of giving up. Like it's not one of those things where I will never be one of those people who is like, oh yeah, well, I used to be creative, but now creativity is
Always.
it is a fixed part of my day. It's baked into my brain. It's part of who God made me to be. It's just, but it no longer dominates my life. It no longer dominates my thoughts. I'm not a slave to it or a servant to it. Now it's just one of those things where when you enter your morning and you draw close to God, it just resets every single priority that you have. And I mean, I my new rule now is I don't post anything on social media until I have had like my quiet time or Bible study with God. And what is the result of that? The result is that whereas my social media page used to be whatever was just flowing out of me, like conflict or my perspectives or my opinion on this and that. Um, and now my social media page is pretty sparse. I don't post at all, and it's not out of principle. It's just that once you connect with the Lord in the morning, you're like, man, I just want to bring peace to this world. I just want to, like, I don't want to bring anything that isn't edifying, that isn't building people up. And the majority of what I posted on social media, it was just, there was a conflict in me, and I brought that conflict into the public sphere. And when there's not a conflict in you, when you know who you are and when you know who your creator is, and you just have peace,
Yeah.
then you don't want to stir up anything in the public sphere unless it's like something that God specifically calls you to.
Yeah.
And so it really impacts every facet of your life.
I agree. And I think a lot of that's being mindful of yourself and your relationship with the Lord, because I couldn't agree with you more.
Hmm.
As somebody who tries to stay very active on social media, I try and stay out of the comments and all of those things of even if I come across something I don't believe in, I'm like, okay, I just pay it no mind and keep going. Whereas
Oh,
used
dude,
to,
I
you'd
was
get
down for
tons.
any war. I was down
Oh,
for
dude,
any and every
I
war on social
remember.
media.
I remember seeing some comments and be like, man, Nathan's real like, and you just read like 20 comments down and you and somebody else are going back and forth. And I not to say I used to be that. I used to, make a comment or two. And then if somebody got all keyboard warrior, I'm like, I'm good. I'm going to pass. And now I'm just like, yeah, if it's not, you know, pouring into me and making me a better person, I'm going to swipe past it. Or again, same thing. I'm trying to post things that are either inspirational, edifying, something about my faith, spreading the word of the Lord, like, but also still tying it into, what I'm doing as a creative, as a real estate professional, as an entrepreneur. But ultimately, like realizing, yeah, that may put some people off. And those are
Hmm.
probably people I didn't really care to work with anyway. They might have some
Hmm.
things that, some tendencies that I don't really like. But now I'm like, I'm finding the people that I'm working with I really enjoy. I know, like, and trust.
Yeah.
Those are the
Yeah.
people not only want to be around, I want to do business with, I want my kids around, I want my family around. Like it just is naturally kind of that way. And I really liked your analogy or even your story of tying it into the Bible of like sitting at the end of the table. Like you go to this big
Hmm.
event and I'm in a big real estate community with a very, very well-known investor and does a lot of things and is very wealthy and truthfully joined this community to get closer access to him. But even him, he's like, hey, listen, if you're here to get access to me, you joined for the wrong reasons. There's 500 other
Yes.
people in here that are doing
Yeah.
amazing things that you guys can partner and go do your own things. And as soon as I was like, that clicked in my head, and as he calls it, you understood the assignment because he does the same thing.
Hmm.
His masterminds. People join these to go
Hmm.
get access to these really, really high level people, but all the other people in the room are there to make an impact too. And I've really migrated and kind of been attracted to a handful of people in there that are not afraid to speak up for their faith, not afraid to speak out, not afraid to be bold, you know, and I'm really enjoying that kind of mixture of community, faith, as well as like business and entrepreneurship. And I feel like it's really growing me as a person as well. Like you said, I'm in that same phase of was in PT for 11 years and loved it. Still always going to be a part of me. I mean,
Hmm.
and I even had a family member this weekend say, "Hey, do you mind taking a look at my knee? Sorry to bug you with this." I'm like, it's not my everyday day-to-day job anymore. So I actually enjoy this. Like I want to pour into other people. I
Yeah,
want you to
yeah.
ask me about your knee, your back, your shoulder, because that's still fun for me. Like it's diagnosing and it's treating and it's giving people, advice on how to better themselves. And that's in my eyes, that's still a way I minister to other people. It's
Yeah.
not as a pastor, it's not as a Catholic pastor. I knew that was never a path for me, but there's other ways to get in touch with God, rather outside of church, and other ways to minister, other ways to you know, give pieces of yourself to others and to lead, because that's really what it is, right? That's what leadership
Hmm.
is other people learning from you and wanting to follow because of the things you're putting out there. And
Yeah.
honestly, I think that's what makes you one of the best leaders I've ever met. Like, as soon as I found out you were having a table this year, I'm like, I'm going to be there every Tuesday. I love table 11 too, but I'm like, man,
Yeah, yeah.
I know this guy's heart and I know what he's about and I 100% get behind it. And yeah, couldn't be happier. What, we're only 3 weeks in and I've already missed 1 week, of course. I was gone, but loving every minute of it, man. So thank you
Yeah,
for
yeah.
that.
Yeah. Of course. Of course. My pleasure.
Yeah. So let's take this. So what led to your shift away, I guess, from public school? I
Hmm.
think I know some of this, but how has your path changed since, working at Cornerstone for what, 10 plus years?
No, no. So I
Or you
worked at
left and
Cornerstone
came
that
back?
first year, and then I left with Dr. Large to open a new charter
That's right.
school
That's right.
in Washington Shores. And then just circumstances, he ended up leaving that school or was forced out of that school. And then and so another teacher and I, we started our own school. And so for 2 years we had a school here in Orlando. It was, it was meteoric. That was the way to describe it. I mean, within the first year, within the first 4 months, we had made the local news, and then based on that news story, the within the first school year, we had made the national news. So we were on ABC World News Tonight. They did a feature on us called America Strong, and kind of told the story of our kids and our school. And then, yeah, so then that school lasted for another year, and then we transitioned it into a mentoring program. And so I followed those kids, most of them, all the way through high school. Now they're grown up. They're 21, 22 years old. We've got Marines and doctors, security guards, and
Wow.
um, all kinds of different, people in different professions, and we still stay in touch. And then I basically taught at another school and then transitioned my way back over to Cornerstone. But my decision to leave teaching, it was just it was twofold. Number one, the teaching career was changing. It wasn't the same field that I entered originally. Um, Everything was coming down to liability. Like every decision that schools made, and this isn't indicative of Cornerstone, this is every school on the planet these days. It came down to what do we need to do to not get sued? And so you have to eliminate and mitigate risk. You can't be as creative as you wanted to be. There was this statement like a lesson plan is a legal document. And so basically,
What?
if you don't turn in your lesson plan, then a parent could come after us and sue us, which I guess is technically possible. But it was just getting to the point where everything was so like I think the education system has not intentionally, and this isn't like what administrators want, because there are a lot of creative, open-hearted administrators out there, but the education system in general has forced creative and outside the box teachers out. I mean, you can't survive in that ecosystem unless you totally want to be comfortable existing within that box. And so I feel like a lot of teachers who are more creative or entrepreneurial, they're like, man, I can't do this anymore. And so there was that part, but then also my son was going to be transitioning to a different school and our family dynamic. But it was just an intersection of different parts of my life. And it was God orchestrated, right? Like this is where God wanted me to be in this season. It was the combination of me just kind of feeling out of place in the education field, and then also just my son. having particular needs as he was approaching late elementary. And so it was a very natural transition, but it was a very difficult transition for me personally. Um, I think that I had embedded a lot of my identity in being a teacher. Hey, Bird, can you step out? Thank you. I think I had embedded a lot of my identity in being a teacher, and to the point that I didn't know who I was outside the classroom. I really didn't. I mean, teaching career is just, it's a grind. For 9 months of the year, you just you grind more hours than you're ever paid. You actually, it's like a net loss as a teacher. You're paying for things for your classroom out of the paycheck that they pay you, and and it is in so many ways to a lot of teachers. It's a ministry. You know, it's a field where yes, you're making an income, but it was just one of those things where when I left, I was like, oh my gosh, like who do I say that I am? Like as a man, as a I mean, like I used to just have this like, oh, I'm a teacher, but I'm not just a teacher. I also design creative curriculum, and I also there was always something extra where I couldn't just be classified. And I think that was speaking to the creative part of me, that you just don't want to be boxed in. You don't want people you want people to know that there's this other part to you. I'm not like every other teacher you've ever met. I'm a different kind of teacher. You don't understand. Let me tell you how I'm different. And I think that that part bled into that the season that God had me in, where He was just like, man, I want you to reassess that. I want you to reassess where you have put your identity and where you haven't put it in me. And so I feel like just over the last year or so, if you had talked to me over the past 2 years and said, hey, what do? You would have got a myriad of answers, right? You would have got, oh, I'm a teacher. Oh, I design creative curriculum. I work on different projects. I run a VR project. I obviously like there's a bunch of different answers, but now it's what I do is just kind of like what's where the Lord is leading me and what's necessary in this season, which for this season it is taking care of my family, and this year we're homeschooling our oldest, and so it's really just being where God needs me to be and allowing myself to be positioned there. And through the process, he's instilling all kinds of skill sets in me that I wouldn't have or otherwise I wouldn't have gained by being in this position that I'm at right now. So it's really been a beautiful sabbatical season for me, and just getting to rediscover who I am and getting to discover my first love.
I love that, man. And I love obviously creative is a hot topic when we talk when you and I talk about our creativity and um mainly when I always think of creativity, I think of, photography, videography, your work with education, you know, I'm going to pose one question to you and take it how
Hmm.
you will. But what's one time you've had to get creative in your faith that the world has really tested you? Your faith has
Hmm.
tested you and you've questioned, maybe not even questioned things, but really just a time you've had to be really creative in your faith and how you kind of interpreted a certain situation.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I think a lot of this ties into the kind of the the reason why was I picking all those fights on social media? Why was I very passionate about causes? And I still am to a degree, but it came from the way I grew up in the church. And in the church, call it early 90s evangelical culture, it was very much an environment where you were the persecuted. The world was coming after you. The enemy was going to do everything he could to take you down. The enemy was polluting the world and filling the world with corruption. And the only way that Christians could change things is if Christians fought back. And so intellectually, ideologically, the evangelical faith at that point was very much about equipping you to go out and be strong, to be a light in a dark world. And so I was trained to have no problem walking up to people on the street and ministering to them about Jesus. Like I was trained in church to do that. I was trained to, when you believe something, you fight for it, which I didn't even realize that was going to be that big of a deal until I first went to college. And I had professors who disagreed with me on different things. And man, sometimes the classes would get wild because everybody else would just be like, man, I'm just trying to save my grade here. And me and the professor, or me and a guest professor, we would just be going at it. And that was back in the days, though, when like you could do that with a professor and the professor would give you like a best student in the department award.
Yeah.
You know, nowadays you disagree with the professor and
Get
they're
out.
like, oh my gosh, like, well, it's not even the get out. They're so afraid of public opinion. They're so afraid of social media. They're so afraid of being on
Uh,
the wrong side
yeah.
ideologically that they're like, I love this student. I love how the student challenges me, even if I disagree with him or her, but I can't show that I can't give the student any recognition or honors because that would seem like I'm co-signing or validating their viewpoint. And that just was not present when we were in college. Like it was to a degree. Like I had a professor who would give me bad grades because he disagreed with my perspective. But outside of a few, bad apples like that, we just didn't have to deal with that. And so anyway, my faith involved a lot of fighting. I was a trained assassin when it came to, and I'm not talking like a crazy Baptist that's like on the street with and I'm not generalizing Baptists. I went to church with Baptists. I went to a Baptist church for a while. You get what I'm saying? But like the whole bullhorn, like repent or go to hell. Like I was never one of those people, but I was just always very much trained to use your intellect, use your reasoning and your logic to destroy the other side and to prove that your side is right. Like do the fighting for God. And so I think that a lot of my faith early on, which you could say is creativity, was me trying to build things for the kingdom and trying to just prove that I was on God's team. And I feel that where I'm at right now, which maybe you could say that this is a different kind of creativity. It's a whole lot. It's creativity in the sense of just saying like I'm gonna let God do the shaping instead of me trying to force things. And so I think my answer to your question is just that in this season, creativity is just really just kind of opening your eyes to a different reality and to the story that God wants to tell. Like what are the things that he wants to create? What are the things that he wants to bring into being? And just kind of just being open to helping those things happen. So it's just for me, and again, it's not necessarily active creativity, but it's creativity in the sense of discipline. So if you want to get better, and you know this, everybody knows this, if you want to get better at a craft, if you want to actually be creative and not just imaginative, right? Because Sir Ken Robinson broke it down in those three ways, which I felt were very helpful for me. There's imagination, there's creativity, and there's innovation. Everybody has an imagination and everybody wants to be innovative. Like you want to be the top 1%. You want to be creating the products that are moving everything forward. You want to have that idea that just revolutionizes the field. But there's that middle space, which is creativity, and that's really hard to get from imagination to innovation. And I don't even necessarily want innovation anymore because I just love creativity so much. Like I love that middle space where you're just like you're suffering and you're learning and you're struggling and you're creating something from within that. And so I feel that that's kind of just where I'm at is really just kind of enjoying the creative process and just kind of seeing where God is moving in the midst of it.
That's really good, man. And when you talked about that last piece, I'm trying to remember exactly what it was that stuck in my head before you went on, but that creativity, truthfully, I call it like the lifelong learner, right? We're always wanting to learn a new skill. And
Hmm.
I consider that being creative as if I don't know the solution to a problem, even if it's something totally outside of my realm, but I'm like, man, that's interesting. I'd really like to know how that works or how this, how they made that possible, whether it be again, construction, building a house, whether it be, the fertilizer that it could be anything. And all of a sudden I'm like, my mind goes 12 different ways. It's like, wow, that's really cool. I want to know how they thought up that and I want to learn about it.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that can be our Achilles heel sometimes because we may be making progress on one thing and all of a sudden that ADHD brain is like, whoa, this sounds cool too. Let me go learn everything there is to know about that and become a semi-expert, just enough to be dangerous, but not enough to be,
Uh, that
you know,
dopamine rush.
yeah, yeah. And that's truly how I get, how I get my dopamine rushes. And I'm like, now I'm going to go learn everything there is for the next 24 to 48 hours. And I'm going to totally shift my idea and my plan and my family. We're going to move to Canada instead of stay where we were. And all of a sudden it's like, whoa, rein it back in. Um,
Mhm.
So I love that when you talk about the creativity versus the innovation, or excuse me, the imagination, the creativity and the innovation. I never really heard it voiced like that, but now how your creativity is still what kind of drives you, um, which is amazing.
And a lot of people, and this used to frustrate my friends because I wasn't creative, I was imaginative. A lot of people think they're creative because they can imagine things, but that doesn't make you creative. Like what makes you creative is being able to bring
It's life.
the things that you've imagined and like blood, sweat, and tears, being able to bring those like into existence. It's where we're reflecting the creator. Like God
Yep.
just didn't imagine the world, he spoke it into existence.
Yep.
He doesn't just imagine, you know, and that's different than us. Like I don't believe that we humans are to speak things into existence. I think
Yep.
that's a God thing. Um, but we are reflective of our creator, like we're made in his image. And so we, yes, we have an imagination and it's beautiful. But what I would always stress to my students is I'd have these students who would just have all these different ideas and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. And I'm like, man, you know that that one idea is 10 years of work in a certain direction. Or you're really wealthy and you can hire people who have those skill sets to make it happen.
Yep.
Um, but it's creativity is it takes years and it never ends, like you said. And then it also becomes like a it becomes a drug where you're just like, oh, this is great. I love solving problems. And our spouses are like, stop solving problems. We have enough problems
Yeah.
already.
Yeah, we've got enough problems. Solve the ones here at home before you go
Yes,
take on the world's
exactly,
problems. I
exactly.
know.
Yep, yep.
I know.
Hmm.
That's good what you said about, people imagining things and being, imaginative and thinking of all these great ideas isn't necessarily creativity until those ideas become they get brought to light. And I really liked how you brought that to our creator who's creative and created the world.
Hmm.
He not only imagined it, obviously, had to have the idea first, but then he brought it to light. So until our ideas become brought to light and brought into the world and something that we can see, do, touch, utilize, whatever it is in social media and AI, it's something that will work on its own. That's the creation part of thing, creating something that's physical that we can then utilize for our greater good. And I really liked your kind of walk through, the path of that. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
and being creative is so like helpful in that process too, because I used to come up with ideas and I would imagine things and I would be like, okay, here's my timeline for it. I'm going to be able to accomplish this in 3 months. But you talk to somebody who actually knows what they're doing and they know what's involved, and they're like, yeah, you just laid out like a 10-year challenge for yourself. But I didn't know it at the time. And so that's what I like about surrounding yourself with creative people, and appreciating creative people is just that they're able to look at things and they're able in their head to say, that is a 120-hour time commitment, or that's a 60-hour time commitment, or you're going to need this technology to pull this off. And I don't know if you have those capabilities. And it's not being cynical and it's not being negative. It's someone who has been in that field and they're saying, I know what it takes to get from A to B. And so it's getting back to like the idea of humility and being humble. It's being able to just be real with yourself and say, what my imagination dreams up, I don't have to just chase that. I don't have to go after it like, oh my gosh, the idea came into my head, and so now I have to create it because it came from me. There's a lot of really terrible, ugly things that come from us, or things that aren't going to be beneficial to us and our families. And so it's then the creative part in us, it's that person's job to police the imaginative part of us. When you get to a certain point where you as a creator, the thoughts are running through your head and you're like, I've just done a cost analysis on this, or I've just done pros and cons, and it's just not the best idea. And so my wife fields, at this point, she fields probably 10% of my ideas, which is way too much for her. She can't stand it in like the most generous sense. 10% of my ideas is tons of ideas. The other 90% I shoot down in my head. And it used to be worse. Like it used to be 70% of my ideas, I would run it by her and she was just like, "Oh my gosh, this is exhausting." And but the more creative you get, the more you're able to regulate that yourself and just say, that's not a task that I could accomplish anytime reasonably, or I have other priorities in my life.
That's good. That's good. And I can relate to that as well. Like you said, we always want to bounce our ideas off of the people that are closest to us. And I do that all the time to Lindsay and all the time. Sometimes I can realize when she's receptive to it. Sometimes when I'm like, all right, not the right time. I'll take this right up here and filter out all these dumb ideas and come back to you with one that's really important because it's like they know us. Obviously, they know us better than anybody, right?
Yeah.
They're
And
around
then
us.
when you get the thumbs up from them, it suddenly becomes like super meaningful because it's it's now you present an idea and they go, "Yeah, I think that could work." And you're like, "What?"
Yeah.
Like it's because you've done the front end work and then you've really just kind of planned to present it. And if
Yeah.
it's a good idea, it's a good idea.
I had that moment in January when I went to her and I said, "Hey, I don't think I want to go back full time as a PT. I think I want to try this real estate, this entrepreneurial thing with you and see where it takes us." And she was like, "Yeah, I believe in you. I have faith in you. I have faith in us. Let's make this happen." And I was like, "What? Like, you know what that means, right? Like, that's not the steady paycheck every 2 weeks. That's not the
Yeah,
health
yeah,
care. That's not everything that comes with it." But I think the biggest thing for me is that also means I'm not gone from early in the morning before they walk to school until late after they come home from school,
yeah,
missing
yeah.
extracurriculars, missing all these things. And it
Hmm.
was like, in this time of my life, I'll give up, a little bit of extra money to be able to walk my kids to school every morning and get to be here with her and, have the
Yeah.
flexibility to really figure out what it is that I'm supposed to do in this next season. And it's really been edifying and rewarding. And it's, allowed me to do a lot of things I
Awesome.
wouldn't be
Awesome.
able to.
Yeah.
It's been good, man. It's been good. I'm going to end with one kind of last question here.
Hmm.
If you lost everything today, what's the first thing you do to start over?
This is possessions.
Yeah,
Okay, so not necessarily family.
correct. I'll leave that. I
Okay.
was mean to one of my guests and I said everything, like wife, kids, possessions, money, you name it. You're out on the
I don't
street.
know what I yeah. I don't know what I'd be without my family. So I would be in like a season of I would be in a season of deep, deep years long mourning.
Yeah.
Man, I even think this is weird. I mean, it's not weird. We're imaginative people. Like a lot of people are like, oh man, I would love to go back in the past and like time travel to different parts of my life. I'd make better decisions. And I have nightmares about that because when I do that, your children are so the statistics are like statistically the odds of you having your children are astronomical, you know? Like the sperm, egg, or in like our case, like adoption, like just the right circumstances happening at the right time for your children to be not just created, like a butterfly effect, but then for everything to go through. I have nightmares where I'll wake up and I will have gone to the past, and it's terrifying because I realize that I can't find my way back to my family. And there's no way that you can engineer your family just the way that God has engineered it. And so in that sense, like if family's off the table, losing all my possessions and starting over, um, I think that man, the first thing, I mean, this is like your generic Christian answer, but my answer is I just trust God, you know? Like I trust God to what it's like the book of Job. Job had everything taken away, literally everything except for his life. And he trusted God. And I can't remember what it said in the book, but everything was added to him tenfold. And not that that would happen, not that that's like a promise that God's going to like increase things tenfold. But what it does tell me is that as long as I'm alive, I have a father, and my father loves me and cares for me enough to give everything so that I can know him and experience his love. And so, in that sense, I lose all my possessions, and so what? Like, I still have the most important thing, the only thing that's going to matter when I die, and I'm not going to be able to take any possessions with me. So it's just kind of like an eternal reset while I'm on Earth. It's like, oh, okay, this is what it's going to be like when you leave. And so here's a reset to kind of show you what's important and who you are and where you are in God's eyes. So that's my answer to that question.
That's good. That's really good. And I'm not surprised, but yeah, I mean, I being so strong in your faith, I feel like it makes that answer a lot easier in all honesty. And I'll
Hmm.
say, I not to say lost everything, but when I lost my job in November, I remember sitting in my car and thinking the same things, like going through that morning, that panic, that who do I call
Hmm.
first? What do I say? But then I ultimately sat there in my thoughts for a minute and I was like, I'm gonna be okay. I'm not dying. I'm not, no, I wasn't just diagnosed with terminal cancer.
Hmm.
You've given me, and I'm talking to the Lord at this point. I said, you've given me the skills that I need to move forward into this next season, this next phase. I trust you, although I'm scared. Um, I know that you'll guide me in that next season. And it
Yes.
actually allowed
Yes.
me, I think, I can't remember. We ended up going to the Orlando City game that night, or the Orlando City. No, it was the Orlando Pride game. Because it was and I remember going with a bunch of friends and being like, man, do I still go? Do I? Because funny enough, we had gotten tickets through my work that I had just gotten fired
Hmm.
from. And I like after getting fired, I had the wherewithal to go back and be like, I need those parking tickets that I just printed out. And they were like, what for? You wouldn't want to show up now, would you? Wouldn't that be, be embarrassing? And I looked at the person. I won't say who it was, but I looked at him and I said, embarrassing for who? Like, I did nothing wrong. You guys just told me I did nothing wrong, that nobody knows what's going on, that nobody knows I've been fired.
Hmm.
If I see them, I'll act normal. But I have
Yeah.
friends and I have my kids, more importantly, that have been looking forward to this. It would be more
Yeah.
embarrassing to me than to go home as a dad and be like, hey, I lost my job. And, that thing we'd been looking forward to, that
Mm.
to you in this time in your life means way more than dad lost his job. They may not even fully understand what that means. And I
Yeah.
guarantee
Yeah.
you, if I went back to them now and I said, hey, would you take dad now or last year? They'll be like, I see dad way more now. He's way more involved in
Yeah.
things. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll take dad now. That may not mean anything to them, but missing out on something that they had, really been looking forward to in a time with friends, that
Yes.
fellowship was worth it all.
Yeah.
So I was
Yeah.
able to sit in my thoughts and in my faith that I had been building up. It wasn't just like a boom overnight, but I was able to be like, you gave me the skills, you gave me the wherewithal, you know what's next. I don't, but I'm going to step into that and I'm going to trust you. I'm going to have faith, different faith than I'd been tested with before, of like really letting go. And it was very freeing in that to then walk home or drive home and then, speak to
Hmm.
my family, my wife, my kids, and my parents and let them know what happened. And it was just kind of like I had this sense of peace that I really hadn't had
Yes.
for
Yeah.
instances like that before. And I couldn't explain it, but it really, sitting in my car that day, I could say I felt like the Holy Spirit washed over me as well and was like, gave me that peace to kind of carry on. Um, so yeah,
Yeah. It's so nice to know that when other people or organizations let go of you, that there are other people who won't, that people who are just there, and it's your story is embedded in their story. And so your struggles are embedded in their struggles. And then just like knowing that there's a God who's not going to let go of you. Like, and so for that reason, it's just okay, like this is a blip in my story, but it's God's story to tell. And so let's move on.
we're all just actors in his story. And I'll I'll end with this, the Jesus walking on water goes out to meet the
Mm,
disciples, and Peter calls out to him and says, hey, Lord, if that's you, call me and I'll come. He says, come, and he immediately steps out of the boat. Well,
mm,
then he gets distracted from seeing Jesus and he hears the wind and he hears the waves. And all of a sudden he starts sinking and he starts panicking and he says, Lord, help me. And immediately Jesus holds out his hand, picks him back up, and then they get back into the boat together.
mm.
I use that as a metaphor for my life and a lot of our lives of
That's good. That's
God
good.
called me to get out of the boat. I got out of the boat. I trusted him to do this. And then I panicked because, oh, things weren't going how I thought they should. I thought I was supposed to still be in that W-2, still working hard, still making money, still,
Hmm.
bringing all these things. And immediately things started to change and I
Hmm.
panicked and I'm like, I need you. And immediately he got back in the boat with me and he's guiding me now to that next phase. So we talked through it
Yeah, I
last
love
night
that,
in youth
man. That's so
ministry
great.
of you may have gotten out of the boat alone, but you got back into the boat with somebody else. He's always in your boat, whether you can feel him
Mm,
right there or not.
mm.
And it was so good. It was so powerful. Oh man. Well, hey, I want to be respectful. I know you've got somebody probably waiting on you to get back to some school. I know he'll be missing it if you're
Yep,
gone too long.
definitely.
So, if anybody wanted to reach out to you or find you on social media to debate anything very, very calmly, how would they find you or anything like that, man?
Man, I don't even know. I don't even know. I used to I, I, that stuff just doesn't even
Perfect.
I don't so I would say if you want to find some of the things I've created, The thing I'm working on the most right now is my curriculum, my reading curriculum, which is called Lessonry, lesson with an RY, Lessonry. So you can find some of the stuff I've created through there, but connecting with me personally, just reach out to Trevor. He'll connect you to me.
There you go. Come be a part of Table 53. We need
Yeah,
more
for
we need more
sure. Tuesday
men.
morning.
Nathan
Yes.
doesn't hasn't already filled he's already overfilled his table. Table's usually what 10 to 12 and we've had the very first week we split into two tables for the
Yeah.
breakout. But it's been
Yeah, we're filling
fantastic.
it up.
But man, it's been good. It's been good getting to chat with you. It's good to see you every Tuesday on off chances on the weekends, obviously when the kids are hanging out in the pool
Yeah,
and
yeah,
whatnot. But
definitely.
thank you very much for hopping on here. I will definitely put lessonry in the notes below so that way if you guys want to check out some things that Nathan has created, and feel free to reach out to me if you feel called to, whether it's to reach out to me or to Nathan. I'm happy to be the filter there. So. Um,
Thanks, man. This is great. I love what you're doing.
Thank you,
Thank
brother.
you.
Well, until next time, guys, we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks.